Hello, welcome everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I am here today with two lovely pals, Ian and Carmela. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
If you
Lovely
don't,
to be here.
if you don't know, we're here to.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, someone's got unmuted your YouTube or something. One of you two has your YouTube
Me,
unmuted.
sorry,
Yeah.
I was delayed in starting, so that's why I had to go ahead and mute it.
It's all
We're
good. We're here to talk about your music, or some people's music. I don't know if it's yours, but some people sent in their music, and now we're going to listen to it and give some feedback on it. Hopefully, constructive, helpful feedback. I think it goes without saying that what we're going to say is our own opinion. If you don't like the opinion, that's fine. Don't think about it. Don't implement it. If you like it, great. But we're not going to be, little just pat on the back about it. We're going to try to say something of value. And if we like something, we'll say. If we don't like something, we'll say. And that's what we'll try to do for this session. See how it goes. If your song is one of the ones we're going to listen to now, feel free to say whatever you like about it in the chat in terms of if there's, a particular portion of it or aspect that we should think about. If you want to, you can even pre-write a little blurb in a notepad or something and paste it at that time if that's valuable to you. If you're fine with it, just be like, yeah, it just is what it is and just say whatever you want, then great, we'll do that too. So how it will work is play through the whole song, and then we'll go back and talk about it. We will look at some individual parts or whatever we feel is worth talking about. I also have all the stuff here in Studio One, and so we can put plugins on it, we can put analyzers on it, we can do all that if we want to check out something. Perhaps we'll do none of that, I have no idea, but it's all possible. So I just want to say, band Carmela, I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Welcome to Perfunctory, Elbow, Carmela, Kim, Baby, Frio, Blood, Ian. Good to see you all. Stoked for this, stoked that we can do this. And so hopefully everybody in the Discord knows, and if you're here, that this is a unlisted stream. The stream will stay up after the thing in case you want to go back and listen to the comments we made or whatever, but it's not going to show up on the channel. You're going to need this link to be able to see it. Okay. So I think that's it, right? Anything else we need to say before we start? No. Oh, as you can see, my background is slightly different. For those that know, I've been slaving away putting up absorbers for the past week. I bought, a whole ton of new acoustic panels, and it's not, the background set dressing is not there yet, but hopefully my voice sounds a bit less reverberant, a bit clearer now than it used to be. And yeah, enjoy that. Now we're going to get into it. And I'm just going to go in the order that it's presented to me here, which is essentially alphabetical. And we're going to listen to 9 tracks today. And the first one, not enough reverb, well, sorry. The first one, look at this, I can display a little thing. Bang. Blood with Please Understand Me. That's the track we're going to listen to first. So we're just going to leave it in the view that you're seeing right now, unless we need to go into Studio One and actually check things out. But as it stands, we'll do this, and just let me know if any volume imbalances or clipping or whatever is happening. It's a bit complicated to set all this up properly with the multiple audios in the video and all that. So it's entirely possible that something is bad, and you have to tell me. So. And anyway, let's begin. Here it is. This is Please Understand Me by Blood Save Me. Stoked.
Hi.
Sick. Really like that. Yeah.
Same.
Nice one, Blood. Okay, well, first thoughts on it. The main things that jumped out to me, I would say, I really like the overall flow of the track. I like the end build-up, the crescendo at the end. I think was particularly nice, like this whole section here. With the strings up top, and it feels way fuller than earlier in the track. And that's probably one of my first critiques, is that by the time it gets to that point, it's feeling like this is a good, big, balanced mix. Earlier, it feels a little bit iffy at times for me in terms of like frequency balance and stereo spread. The drums feel like pretty centered. I mean, earlier in the track. Yeah, the eka thing going on, but like otherwise, I feel like the drums are pretty here. That may be a stylistic thing. Maybe you choose to do that. Don't know. For me, I would like try to at least get the high frequencies to be more spread out and keeping the lower frequencies centered. Yeah, that's my first comments. I got some more, but feel free, guys, to if you have any thoughts on it.
I mean, when it comes to mix, I don't think I'm not somebody to really comment on that, because I'm never really good at mixing. Of course, it is a work in progress, so I'm assuming that it's not actually finalized. But some things that really, I took some notes on the side. I really liked the contrast between the synths and the real instruments. I'll give a little like critique feedback kind of thing. For the strings, I think maybe in that like middle section, I would have had them more legato rather than they sounded more of like note by note.
Should we listen to that 1 sec? You mean this?
Sure. Yeah, around like 33.
Those ones.
I would have a mix of that, like it's not a staccato, it's I forget the term for it, but it's like I would have it legato and more of like a staccato detached kind of sound, but like a mix of those to give it a bit of more variety. And I don't know, I thought it was a really good overall track for me. Great job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really loved the build up to that last sort of main section where you got kind of glitchy and the drums would kind of pop in and get panned, and it sounded cool. And then the big like reveal with the strings and the synth, it was a nice build and a good kind of drop in a way. But I think I agree with Max that the main sort of mixing thing that came up throughout was the drums feeling so tight, and not necessarily like in a good way. I mean tight, like too centered, and not kind of big and like powerful. I think the drums like that worked really well in the buildup because they had this contrast where they felt kind of small and glitchy. But then once the drop hit, I would have wanted them to feel like they expanded and like filled everything. So like Max said, you have that sort of perky, weird loop going on. That's more stereo. But I think the whole kit needs to try and be more spread out. If you can try panning your hats and your rides and just kind of making it feel more full, I think that would add to the impact of the track overall.
So something that I know about this, because I've talked to Blood about his stuff quite a bit, is like he's often sampling drums in a kind of traditional style that happens in this world of music, the genre of music and stuff is usually kind of mono-ish. So, perhaps he can't just go in and separate his hats and his rides and all that. So he has to use, if he wants it, some kind of stereo widener or some kind of mid-side processing or some kind of even like bouncing the drums out, filtering them, and then panning those filtered versions side to side. That's a particular way to do it. You could filter everything but the highs, either pitch shift them or do something so they're different frequency, and pan those side to side, main drums in the middle, things on the side. That's one way you could get width there as well. I wanted just to listen back to this drop again. I want to focus on the bass. I feel like there's some room there for more harmonics in the bass. My personal taste. I just like to hear a little bit more growly moving inside because the notes are so long. I mean, I guess it's part of my way of thinking about bass is like the shorter the notes are, the more that the line will stand on its own. The tone matters less because it's the rhythm, the syncopation, that kind of deal is like you don't need an interesting tone that much because you're getting interest somewhere else. But when the notes are super long, I want evolvingness. Anything to me in a track that feels static, like it's unchanging, feels artificial and a quality of not being real somehow. So I know there's something going on here, but my sensation when I was first listening through is I wanted more of it.
Yeah, I think like this is like a drum and bass thing, right? Like that's the vibe I'm getting from this, that what you're going for. And when you listen to like top quality drum and bass tracks, there's always some kind of like evolving sound going on, especially if it's like a held note or a held chord. Like the sound design in drum and bass tracks is like otherworldly sometimes. So I think that's something to think about when you listen through your track the next time. Just like anytime you hear something that sounds the least bit static, or like this sound is like okay but it could be better, like just try to do something with it. Try to make it move in some way more interesting, more complex, more evolving, and that will just boost your track to the next level, I think.
My last thought here is piano. So two comments on it. One is at some point it must be here. While I think the piano melody works, it's a bit just kind of, I'm not sure what, plain. I want it layered somehow. Like it just feels a bit too like dong, again, kind of static. The note just sits there, hyper compressed, kind of static quality. If it was layered with some kind of other real instrument, could be fine, even a horn or a string or something, or a synth, or if the piano itself had some modulation on it, or bigger reverb even, or something. It just feels like there's all this stuff going on, and then the piano sits like right here and just goes dong and just sits while all this happens, like it's almost not part of the interaction, if you know what I mean. Here it is. I like the melody. I just feel like I want something more to happen with it, to be more like this is your focal point. It's sitting in a low range, right? So it's inside everything else. The chords are there, the bass is in that kind of range with its harmonics, the drums are there, everybody's there. So it needs maybe something to stand out a bit. Oh yeah, and then, where was that? These voicings are really low. Like to the point of being muddy, in my opinion. So like when I'm, where's my piano sound here? What is this even in? So the thing is, like, I want some kind of, you got to watch when the major chords start to get low like this, right? They become kind of too muddy. And so the idea is keep the 1 and the 5 low, lift the 3rd up like this, or even more spread. Maybe that's too far now. Oh, my phone's preventing me. Something like this. I feel like I'm such sensitivity to these low chords, especially when they're in like just a straight root position, 1, 3, 5, and you just like move that thing way down low. To me, not only does it sound muddy, but it has a, because I was that, amateur sound to it of like, here is a chord. I'm going to put a chord down here. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to put that on you as though that's the way you're thinking. That's how I was when I was learning piano, and just thought, well, that's a chord. I'll put it down here. But, of course, there's limits as to how far you can go with that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point, because I mean the lower range, lower register of the piano is definitely deeper, and I mean just in general, like my experience with like when I was in school, I had a choir director who had perfect pitch, and we would test them all the time. Sir, what's this note, huh? And then we would play like literally a cluster in the lower range, and he's like, that's really difficult to tell. Like you have to spread out a little bit, but like I can tell what they are, but it's not nice to hear. It's very difficult to make out.
Yeah, I think in general practice, that's totally correct about what you were saying with the voicings, Max, like kind of spreading them out. Although I will disagree a little bit in that in this instance, I kind of like the vibe of like the low growly, you can't really tell what's going on. I think that is a type of sound that needs to be used in the right place and in the right kind of way. But I think it could work here. Even like
It's a
especially
vibe.
it's a vibe. And in this section where it's only the piano and it's kind of like a breakdown, like a chill transition spot, it's like it's kind of a cool sound to have that just really low, like, ooh, it's like kind of takes you out of it. It's like, oh, this is kind of interesting what's going on now. So
I
obviously
think it
like
could work, yeah. In that
yeah.
lower that section that you're specifically saying, and I think going back, let's say around like the 17 mark where Max was saying, you know, the piano is like really lower range kind of thing. Everything is kind of like lower range. What I usually do to fix that on my end, whenever I have something, I'm like, I feel like it sounds empty in some areas. I'll double in like higher range, like 2 octaves up to see if it kind of opens it up. And then maybe even remove the lower register just because I play around with it in that sense, or I'll add harmonies, especially for a line that's very stagnant. I'll try to have like a counter melody, not so of course like kind of like matching it, but sometimes adding harmonies could help with that, like upper range harmonies.
Great. Okay, yeah, I agree. All good. Let's move on then. Thanks, Blood. It was great.
Yes, great job.
Next up, we got Elbow. Now, Elbow specifically told me this is a final version of his song, and he's extremely happy with it. It is definitely not a work in progress, and he will not change anything about it, no matter what we say. So, just so we all know that going into it. This is called Forever Blue by Elbow. Woo! That was sick. Nice one, Elbow. Beautiful.
Okay, so Perfunctory brought up a good point. What is live played? What is sample library? What's recorded? Because I gotta say that sax entry was beautiful. As soon as I heard the sax, I was like, I got goosebumps. Like, I'm not even kidding. So yeah, I haven't been part of like the challenge streams in a while. So Elbow, I've never heard your stuff. This is fantastic. I don't know what your style is. I don't know what's live, what's MIDI, so Max, do you have more information for me?
I don't.
Oh.
My assumption is that it's all MIDI based on what I know of them.
Wow.
So, Elbow, can you clarify that? And because I know you had that muted trumpet sound, or you had a trumpet sound before, and it turned out really well. And here it sounds great as well. It's all live played, but heavily edited afterwards. So before you were using a trumpet that was MIDI, right? Or I should say, when you say live played, do you mean it's live played like this, or you're literally recording live instruments? That's a big difference. Is it MIDI instruments that you played live, or are you recording actual live instruments?
Yeah, because if you're playing all of that, what? Jeez. Oh, live MIDI, Perfunctory says. Sure.
MIDI, but played live.
Played live.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Gotcha.
I loved it. I'm a sucker for the whole thing. The really interesting option there in the beginning to have two basses, fretless bass playing melody and acoustic bass playing bass. I thought that was great. Such a sucker for the fretless bass sound. If I'm correct about that, tell me if I'm not. Here's the sound. Yeah, two basses. Thought it was great. I thought that was beautiful arrangement, great harmonic decisions. This change coming into here. Where is that?
I think 25.
So the one thing that I was thinking throughout that you did do at the end is that when these B sections were coming in, this harmonic shift, I wanted some more pad-like element, which at the end you brought in the strings there. I don't know if there's something else that can be added in earlier, either strings in a different register, woodwinds, something, that the change is so dramatic in the harmony, and you go to the ride, the whole thing starts to feel like more open. But for my sensibilities, the background is too vacant at that moment, and I want something to come in there, even just a subtle pad that you can't even tell is there, or something. But at the end here, I think you've got that. Yep. So yeah, I love that. My other main comment, it would just be on the mix of the piano. Feels to me, where does that first come in? I want it just a bit wider and a bit fuller sounding, and only that's because I get the feeling of, separation, which of course maybe is your intention of being like, this is a live played thing. They're standing there, and so on. I almost feel like bass is a little bit in my right ear, piano's in my left ear. But my center point there feels a little bit vacant during that time when the piano's just playing. And even if the piano was just shifted over, or its range, its stereo width was expanded more, and perhaps, this is so subjective, slightly brighter in my opinion, because the drums have a very bright quality to them, and the piano feels like it gets sunk a little bit as a lead instrument at that point. For my sensibility, I feel like I kind of lose it, and my attention drifts to where the brightness happens to be, which in that case is the drums. You tried to add more brass in that section, but it felt overdone. Might try a bit different sound. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna ask for you guys listening, like does it sound like the kick and the bass and some other elements are just slightly to the right? Like they didn't feel completely centered to me.
The bass does for sure. I don't know about kick and snare.
Oh, the snare seems centered.
Yeah, I definitely have bass more in my right ear.
Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering whether that was my headphones doing weird things or not. But it's not like it's not typical for that nowadays in terms of mixing to have bass anywhere other than completely down the center. I feel like unless it's for like a very specific like purpose, in which case I think it should be more extreme. So I think that's just maybe a stylistic choice, or I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
Max, can we listen to the piano, that little piano solo? Like we don't have to listen to the whole thing. Maybe just as of like, I don't know, between 41 and 49, and then because I have a comment, but maybe I'm not remembering it properly. So if you
Sure. Yeah. Let me just see. You said between what?
let's say at 1:30.
1:30.
Yeah, you can stop it now. So you see there's like a change in section. There's a clear change in section to me, right? I think maybe I was just expecting a little bit more of maybe maybe it's the percussions. Something a change in percussions too to make it a little bit more lively. Because it felt like the piano was getting more lively, but it was just the piano. So the piano was kind of like going off on its own, and it kind of to me felt like a disconnect with the band. Because this style of music feels like kind of jazzy to me, right? And when I think of jazz, I think of like the band is really tight because everybody's kind of like, playing improv, and they're vibing off of each other. So I guess maybe it just felt like a disconnect with the rest of the bands to me. I would have maybe expected, I thought maybe at first a different kind of comping for the piano, but I think now listening back, I think it's more the percussions I wanted, or like everything else to be a little bit more lively. Something else to be more lively just rather than just the piano.
That's the same feeling that I mentioned earlier about changing into that kind of B section harmony. Felt like it's so like, oh, something's happening, but there wasn't somehow enough there to capitalize it. But in the very last section, there is enough to capitalize it. So yeah, I agree. It could be a percussion thing. Depends on though how producery you want to be, right? Of course, as a producer, you can do whatever you want. You can add in percussion just for that section, even though you don't have a player who can play it. But perhaps in this sort of context, you're thinking of, I have X number of players, and this is what they're capable of doing, and I can't add this in because they don't exist in this band. That's a very valid way of writing, of course.
So I think that kind of touches on the main sort of thought that I had throughout this, which is you're putting yourself in a difficult position writing this type of music in a DAW, and especially trying to play it all with MIDI, because this is a very sort of organic feeling genre. I think it has some jazz elements. It has some, it feels like it should be played by a real band in a studio. And so the fact that you're trying to put this all together in a DAW using virtual instruments, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of work to try and get it to a point where it sounds like real. Because even though you're using good instruments, I can tell like you have good sounds and stuff. I can still hear like the MIDI-ness to it occasionally. And anytime I can hear the MIDI-ness to something that I want to sound organic, it's just going to take me out of it every time. So of course it's a sound. It's not, there are no bad sounds, but like if what you're going for is that sort of organic band-like sound, you have to put so much effort into the automation and finding the right sounds so that you don't get any of those moments of like, oh, this is definitely a MIDI,
Agreed.
So detailed when it comes to automations. Yeah.
Okay, well, it was great. Thanks, Elbow. It was beautiful. Really appreciate you putting that in there. It was a great change of pace. I'm sure there's going to be nothing quite like that that we listened to. It's wonderful. Okay. Next up. Okay, this time I'll actually put the person's name in there at the right time. This is Kim with Macolaire. Hope I say that half decently.
I can't wait to listen to this.
What does this mean?
My rage.
Your what?
My rage. Like
Oh,
my
rage.
anger, my rage.
Good. Okay, well, here we go. Let's check it out, Kim. Wow. That was dope.
That's
Heavy.
definitely for a video game and on loop, perfect. Like I'm a big fan of Kim, so like I'm gonna be biased now.
Winner.
Yeah, it was great, Kim. Good vibe, consistent vibe all the way through. I don't think you lost that feel, despite the changes in sections. I feel like it all kind of went really well together. And I've got some points I'll touch on here. One is drums. Louder, want the kick louder, snare slightly louder, more width. So one thing to think about in terms of drum width is rhythmic, if not, okay, at least alternating, if not polyrhythmic width changes. So for instance, if your hats are wide, which you've got very fast hats now, you can have ticka 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 ticka. Then you keep the snare centered, so you get ticka 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 ticka. You know what I mean? Going wide and center. Right now they're all right down the middle. So if you keep your hats centered, then you make your snare wide. You have a main snare, and say you take two claps, different claps, pan them hard left and right, so you get ticka 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 ticka. Or if you're going to keep them all down the middle, which is totally doable, kick, snare, hats, then you need something else which is pretty constant, not like a tom every once in a while, but some kind of like percussive thing that is doing the sides, so that we get this interplay between centered and width. Because if that doesn't happen, the whole thing starts to feel just too much right here. That's my sense of it anyway. So drums, I think, can be beefed up a bit, in terms of literally volume and a bit of saturation, and then some kind of width interplay. That's my first point.
I'm taking notes too. Like that was great advice.
Yeah, 100%. I was thinking the same thing with the drums. That seems like a common theme, honestly, throughout these so far, is the doing more with panning with drums. It's it's a huge thing. It can really make your track feel wider and the percussion feel more powerful. One thing I thought, especially at the beginning with that super growly, mean bass tone, I think when you have something that's so like that covers so much of the frequency spectrum and is so like it feels very compressed, like it's just taking up a lot of the headroom whenever it's playing. I think that needs to be like the focus, and there can't be kind of other things going on that it's covering up. Because I got the sense that like that whenever it was playing, it was kind of covering other things up, and it's such like an intense sound that I want everything to like be working along with that or just not there while that's playing to make it more impactful. And like just it gives us this feeling when it's playing with other things that like what am I supposed to be only focusing on this, or am I trying to also hear the little things that are happening behind it? You know, I don't know, it has kind of some weird mixing vibes for me.
Yeah, that was going to be my next comment. And in particular, there's a spot, I think right here. That guy comes in at the same register, roughly speaking, as the big brass stabs. Right? It's messy. It's hard to determine what's going on there. Either the brass has got to stop, the pulse has to go up an octave at least, or it needs to be hyper-centered and perhaps filtered so it's not so bright, because both things are bright and competing. If instead you took that and put like a bandpass filter on it so it's at like, I don't know, 1,000 or 800 or something like this, like a tight little thing, then it gets its own distinct whirl, and you put it centered and you keep the brass wide, that will distinguish it. If you're not going to do that, you've got to put it somewhere else so it's out of the range of this thing. This thing is okay just because it's static, relatively speaking. It's just wah. So you can have rhythms going on top of it, but they can't be in that, in my opinion, can't be in that same zone as it, because then, just like Ian said, you get this sensation of where to listen. A kind of mind-boggling quality comes about, which is, I don't know, not that enjoyable.
We probably missed some details too if they're within the same range, right? And like, I mean, I didn't really catch that. You guys are really great with like mixing stuff, right? So I didn't catch that in the beginning, and then playing it again, oh yeah, no, it's true. I almost didn't even hear it. So.
You got this. Doom, doom, doom. That's bass thing. Right there, should have gone down an octave. Right, you've got an octave of headroom there, I believe. You can go down an octave with whatever that note is. It's probably like a C or something. I don't know what that is. B. So then, yeah, I feel like that's just doom, 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 and then the drums come in. Be sick right there. It was just like a little thought that I had that kind of like just wanted that.
That's what's a good example, actually. Like as soon as it gets in that spot with the slap bass and like the kind of little that sound, like it sounds to me heavier and cooler when the sort of wah brass thing isn't there. It has more like there's an openness to it. I can hear the different parts that are going on. I can hear how they interplay with each other, and it feels like nice without that kind of wah sound covering them up. So just to prove the point that I feel you need to be careful when you use sounds like that, because they're easily going to cover up other parts of your mix.
There's a concept in EDM, I'm going to not remember the name of it, but call it horizontal composition or horizontal arrangement, where rather than considering stacking many things vertically, you have primary sounds that are extremely broadband. They cover the whole frequency spectrum like this one roughly does, and they actually put them end to end as opposed to stacking them. And so you have a series of broadband sounds with some space in between that are put horizontal rather than the traditional kind of band approach of stacking things vertically and they all go horizontal. That becomes more and more the case the more broadband a sound is, because of this exact reason. It masks everything, and you don't actually need to have more there, because in order to get bigness, Bigness is the effect of filling all musical dimensions. So you're filling frequency spectrum low to high, filling stereo spectrum like this, filling depth with reverb, filling density with compression. When all these things are filled, then you have the sensation of massiveness, basically. And so you can have a series of these things, but as soon as one comes in, you kind of can't have anything else going on in there, not just for the masking reasons I'm talking about, but also for mastering reasons, because you'll find it's difficult to get loudness out of the track when you've got this broadband sound with kicks punctuating it and other elements that are in there that also have transients. You start to find that your limiter can't get pushed very hard, and it's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, came to mind there. I'm just going to jump around a couple more spots to see if there was something else that we missed, unless Carmela, you've got something on your mind there.
Oh, I was just thinking about the fact that I really like that Ken's track has, so many different, like, I felt like there were so many more sections than I expected there to be, and I didn't feel like it was overloaded either, because the transition between each section just felt like it wasn't forced. I really liked the variety of each section and the fact that it was a great transition.
Agreed. Well, that was my next point. This lead sound is too plain for the rest of the track. It's just, like the most standard saw wave, super saw kind of filtered thing. And I get it's a bit like stylistically appropriate or whatever, but it doesn't grab me as being like, want to hear more of that. It's just got a kind of like, yeah, that's that sound vibe to it. So that lead sound could either be improved by altering the sound itself or by layering it with some other sound that is complementing what that one is not doing, right? This sound is hyper smooth, right? It's got no clickiness or to it at all. So that can be introduced in a variety of ways through FM, through ring modulation, through layering a synth an octave lower, through a bunch of different techniques can do that. You can also just increase the modulation on the thing in terms of like if pulse width modulation, where you've got, the thing, the waveform shortening and lengthening gives a very particular sound, which is common in this super saw type of sound that you got going on here. I don't have a specific solution for you other than compared to the rest of the track, which is just like that one sound felt like meh, may as well have a different one. And I think that's it for me. Yeah. Everybody good?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Kim. Banging. Okay, next up. Perfunctory. P-Funk, as we call them around here.
Funk.
Okay, it's called Inquiries of a Technical Nature. It's long and it's loud. I can see that from the waveform. Wow. Awesome. Loved it.
Perfunctory always has such big pieces. Like,
Mm.
one thing I want to say is this really felt almost experimental, as in like it's painting a picture to me. I feel like as if the piano is kind of like a character and there's movement around it. So I think one thing I already have a little feedback to give. I did notice the panning for certain sounds, but I think what I wanted was movement with for those sounds, like the ambient noises as they're sounding, moving from one ear into another. I think would make it more of like, 'cause it's already feels like an experience, but I think it would literally like you close your eyes and you can feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Perfunctory is constantly exemplifying what I'm always harping on about regarding world building within music production. The sense of really place and space, that this is a real place and there's layers and layers of sound. The more you want to listen back, the more that is happening, just like in reality. And I really love that quality. It's just, it feels completely, what's the word? I'm missing it now, but like I'm there. Immersive. Like it's very immersive. And I think this track really exemplifies that in many, many ways. There's so many subtle layers of interesting ambient background movement, and but I hear what you're saying, Carmela. To even take it further is to have movement within those things. And it's amazing the effect that even just straight up white noise, like happens in this section, when you push play like that, it's like, oh yeah, of course there's white noise there. But like coming out of the previous section where it's been there the whole time, you almost don't notice that it's there. But if you were to remove it, it would become hyper sterile, even though it's just basically like mic fizz, essentially. So I thought that was interesting that here you've got this kind of standard white noise, in a sense. And here you've got something similar, but it's more moving. Right, so it's not just one type of noise the whole time. There's all different experiences going through there. I really appreciate that, and I think you did a great job with creating the atmosphere.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the atmospheres. It felt very fluid. None of it felt forced. It put me in the world and it kept me in it. And yeah, I loved the ambience of it. I have one critique that I would be interested to hear your guys' opinions on. Towards the beginning, where the kick drum first comes in, I have this sense like when it's sort of a dry, subby, almost like could be an EDM kick if used in certain circumstances, like it almost gives me the feeling like that kick sound takes me out a little bit. It takes me out of this section. I almost want it to be a little less subby and a little more kind of reverb. I want it to expand as it hits, like, and have like, it doesn't need to be powerful. It doesn't need to become like more distorted or more highs or anything necessarily. I just want to have like more space to it, so it doesn't just kind of feel like, I don't know, it gave me the sense when it came in like, oh, it's going to start kind of moving now, like the drums are going to start kind of coming in. But no, it was just kind of like a subby kick that hit every bar.
Let's just see. Is it this? Nope. Here. I think one of the tricks with that sort of thing is I do feel, and maybe I'm tripping, that there is a bit of expansive afterburn to the kick, but the click on the top of it is so tight and tiny that gives perhaps an illusion that it's just this little like bit that comes in, you know. So click management on kicks, that's a whole topic, man. I should do a video on that. How and when different types of clicks work. Perhaps in this case, no click might have been the solution, in which case it's just, and you get this more, you know, just reverbery, pillowy kind of quality. Perhaps that's too cliche and you wanted to get away from it and get a click on it. But I hear what you're saying with that, Ian.
Yeah, I guess the click is probably partially what's tricking my ear. Like it has such a that I don't know. I want it to be. I want it to feel more like it's part of the ambience rather than just kind of like a kick. You know what I mean?
See, yeah, because the kick is it's like a disruption in the X. I mean, it sounds very it's like this, right? But the kick is a little peak, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe if it's a little maybe a little muted instead, to blend with those ambient sounds. But I do like the kick just because like the fact that there is a little peak because it adds a kind of I know it's a feeling. For me, it just adds a different kind of feeling, rather like instead of it not having that peak, it's like perfunctory pieces are so emotional. They're so emotional. They're an experience. It's like a world. So I think it would just be a different world without the kick.
Agreed. So I've got on the drums side of things a couple of points. Here, I want to say you've got this like, I don't know if it's not a tabla, but it's, no. Here. That guy. Doom, doom. Doom. There's masking going on here between that, all the other sounds that are in this range and the actual fundamentals of that drum, such that it's such a nice sound. I wanted it to be clearer, such that you might even want to like either scoop out, like look at what those frequencies are and scoop more out around it so that there's a constant hole that sits there and this thump comes in to fill that, you know, because it's so satisfying, but I feel like it just gets lost in a kind of haze of mid-ranginess as well here. That snare crack is so sharp and tight, similar to maybe the kick thing. Like, I don't know if it's just the hyper compression or if you've got some transient designing on it or whatever, but it's a little bit, to me, too sharp. I want more flatter, almost pancakey kind of sound. It's just got a bit of a harsh, 2,000 to 4,000 type of range crackiness to it that disrupts my my piece. Then later on, you've got the drums here, which I think are oversaturated. I get the idea of like increasing energy. It just to me gets too gravelly. You know, I feel all these granules inside of the snare and the kick and whatever because of the saturation. And bordering on, especially near the end, bordering on sounds wrong. Sounds to me like this was over, like this is clipping, basically. You pushed it too hard. And maybe that's the artistic intention, I don't know, but it stood out to me as being like, it's a little bit too much. I could have just done for bigger as opposed to more saturated. So instead of the snare being, it could be, you know, big pillowy fat things that have all the highs floating off of them when they hit and whatever. Could have worked in that situation.
Can I just comment on that last section? I think I mean this might be just a preference thing, but I think the transition between the quiet ambient, very quiet ambient section into the the main, like the big bang kind of thing. I think maybe I would wanted to have been prepared for that, just because like I said, this is an experience. It's a world. I don't want to be surprised. I don't want a shock. So maybe like a reverse cymbal kind of sound to build up into this, big percussion section. That maybe it's just like a preference on my end, but that's what I felt when it came in. I was like, oh, I would have liked a better transition.
You talking about this here?
Yeah. Like a preparation.
You've got something there that is pretty interesting. I totally hear what she's saying. However, you've also got, I'm going to look at this waveform. Yeah. Check this out. He's got this space right before that goes silent, which I really dig. I was just talking to Ian about this the other day. I'll bring that up in a second. Let's listen again, but check out this space that happens right here. Right, it's like it just stops all of a sudden and then smacks. But the smack is very sharp. I agree there could be more preparation for it, and perhaps the space is even too big, I don't know. But there's a technique in the EDM world where, jump scare, yeah, exactly. In the EDM world where prior to every drum transient, you have a kind of side chaining that is sucking everything into silence in the millisecond right before a transient hits, so that every transient has clear space to have its full impact, as opposed to hitting within a massive waveform that's already there, right? All these frequencies are currently there, and the kick has to somehow cut through them. Instead, they have this technique where it all, right before, goes silent almost imperceptibly, and then you have totally clear space for every transient, every kick and every snare. Very cool technique. This reminded me of it here. I like the idea of sucking away like that, but maybe like what Carmel was saying, just a bit more preparation for it could have been less
It's
jump
really
scare.
just because I felt like this specific track is an experience, because definitely it's definitely impactful. But up until that point, I was like, this is really nice. Like, I want to close my eyes and just listen. But then when that part comes in, oh, something, kind of it brought me out of it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the exact same feeling. That was something I was also gonna comment on, and I'm not saying that surprises are not a good thing in music, but I think it's a balance of like surprise and like actually, yeah, like a jump scare, like Frio said, like, oh my God, it's big now all of a sudden. And I think it's a mix of like how much of a volume difference you have there, plus the hit is very harsh for some reason. I think it's probably the saturated drums. There's something hitting super hard in like a higher frequency range right at the start that's just like, ooh, it kind of like hits your ears in a weird spot that doesn't feel very nice. So you could either build it up more beforehand so that that hit is a little less, sudden, or you could make the hit itself less harsh, and maybe it would work better. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, in build-ups, not just adding riser type material, but adding in some sort of musical element that is signifying of something. Like, this was not there before and now it's here. In this case, I was going shing, just having one little ding or clack or whatever to be like, oh, something new is here. It's already piqued our ears, and then when the big hit comes, it's like, it's a bit softened because we've had one transient already, or one note has come in, or something to that effect. My last thought here is two things. Love the upward key change. I just felt like so elated. I think this is where it happens. I just feel like, ooh, I really like that. The downward one was not as impactful for me, but it's besides the point. I understand the purpose. Here in this breakdowny bit here, where you continue the thingy, I could have done with a relaxation of this motif, this melodic thing of the descending, quarter note vibe, because we've heard it the whole time. Could have either done with just nothing, just holding, and then bring it in near the end of the transition, or something totally different, some sort of B melody, some sort of something that plays off of it, maybe ascending, maybe it's still descending, but it jumps to higher notes as it goes down. It just felt like I kept wanting some kind of new melodicness, but the whole thing is harping on this descending thing, which I get that. I get the idea that's behind that. But that was my sensation when I got to this section. I was like, oh, okay, here comes the relief from descendingness or whatever, right? And it's going to come back again in the drop or whatever you want to call that last section.
I had a very similar thing to say about that I think a kind of counter melody that plays at the exact same time would really help there, especially in the last section where it's really big, and you could even kind of show it off in this sort of quiet section before the drop. But I think your current melody with the piano is so kind of simple, and we've heard it the whole time. It's kind of just become a part of the song that we don't necessarily notice anymore. So I think it could continue to play while a new kind of more flowing melody comes in on top of it. It could be a mix of strings and synth, or just something that is really big and expands on this awesome feeling of the world that you've already built. You know, it kind of makes me think of like a Hans Zimmer track where he'll have these very kind of rhythmic melodies for the most part, and then he'll have these big, like, powerful brass melodies that come in on top of them, and like they really expand everything. So I think you could do something similar here.
Agreed. Where in the track Perfunctory is the sample of you're saying your daughter? Is that what you're talking about? I'd be curious to see if we can actually hear it.
It's her inhale before the first drop.
The first drop. Oh, okay, here. Oh, that's it's a different song. That's the part we didn't hear.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's wonderful. I love that.
That's like a little Easter egg. So cute.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Perfunctory. It's wonderful. Next up, Phosphine. Phosphine, are you here? Don't think so. Phosphine, your track was like super quiet. So I normalized it now. It might still be quiet compared to everybody else's, I'm not sure. But just so you're aware, in the future, you know, putting it into a feedback thing, at least put it into a limiter pretty decently. Okay, here we go. This is Phosphine with Canny 1. Here we go. Oh, you want to go pee? Okay, well we'll take an intermission. Sure, we can wait 5 minutes here.
Yeah, we can discuss. I don't know. Who is it? Somebody maybe it was Elbow who mentioned. I'll you know, on this next playthrough or next listen, whatever. I was wondering I don't know if you guys want to get feedback from the actual Discord team. Maybe we could put in, like, maybe create a sub, whatever, like a what do you call it? Anyways, to create something in feedback so that it's just like, what is a subgroup, subtopic, anyways, yeah. So that people can actually like comment what they thought, and whoever wants can post their work in progress, because maybe we don't want to post it on the SoundCloud because it's a work in progress. So yeah.
No, I wouldn't post these on the SoundCloud, but you're saying that we would make a post in feedback and put all today's songs in there, and people can kind of chat about it in that.
Whoever wants. Yeah, because I mean, it was submitted and maybe they don't want it actually like uploaded onto the Discord. Like, whoever wants can upload their track in a sub post on feedback.
Yeah.
And we could talk about those tracks specifically.
Great. That's a good idea. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna go because, you know, how long does it take you to go pee? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
Perfunctory.
This is Phosphine with Canny 1, I guess, or Caneel. I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to be. Here we go. Nice one, Phosphine. Groovy. First thing, this intro sound that you got doesn't match the rest of the track. I heard this intro sound and I was like, damn, what's this gonna be? And then when it switches to that, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not that at all. So that for me was a bit of a weird experience. I was expecting some kind of like, I don't know, dark atmospheric thing, and then, you know, so I wonder about that. Either letting that thing ring out more continuously to be like, no, this really is a part of the track and not just a one-off kind of cool sound, or switching the sound out entirely would have been fine. So drum-wise, too much. Every section, except for this one, until is just the same, right? I mean, that's my way. I get bored of the same thing, especially when it's just 4 on the floor, not 4 on the floor, but rock beat back and forth. Very, very tiny hi-hat. Can hardly even hear. So I would say either sections should be, if you're going to keep the rock beat thing back and forth, sections should be having percussion and or hi-hats and or cymbals and or rides coming in and out to make differentiation. Because if the kick and the snare aren't going to make the differentiation for us, something else has got to do it. At least when this comes in. Drums should either be filtered, drop out entirely, leave just the snare with the hi-hats, so that when we come back into a big section, it has meaning again. Because we've been hearing the kick the whole time. The next section also has the kick. I don't get enough of a contrast to feel like, oh, okay, here's this and there's that, and this feels big now, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think along those lines, the main sort of melody / bass thing that's going on, because the bass is kind of following the melody in a very similar way. I think it just kind of becomes fatiguing at a certain point. Like it's similar to the drums. It kind of just plays mostly consistently throughout the whole song. And so it's like by the second or third section, you're like, okay, like I've got this, like what else you got, basically, you know?
I definitely wanted more variety in here. I'm a really big fan of panning, as everyone knows. I think even just panning some things would like play with the sound a little bit, make use of the space. I have here also, oh yeah, the melody is very vertical to me, like step, 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 dun, dun, dun. You know, like it's, I think I would like a contrasting kind of legato maybe in another section. Doesn't have to be note, 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 note. It's maybe a little bit more flowy in a different section so that it gives a different feel. And definitely I'll just like echo that the drums, yeah, it's very stagnant throughout the, like, I want variety in that too. I feel like the vibe is just, you know, it's fatiguing. It is.
So in general, I would say that the track, obviously it's a work in progress, but the track has a copy and paste vibe to it currently, right? Wrote a little loop, here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is, and now here it is, but it's kind of different, and here it is, here it is, here, you know, like this. So it needs change. One thing that came to my mind, is that the pitch? So, got this thing the whole time. I feel like it could go down to say like, I'll do it with triads. And then oh my gosh. Yeah, something like this, or even what could it be? Maybe more like B flat and C. If you want the like uppity vibe. Something to break that. So you have the riff the whole time, and then you move into like sustained chords that maybe even back and forth for a while, and you can have a new melody, and then suddenly that's like, oh damn, that's groovy again, right? Because it is groovy. It just needs something else to tell us it's groovy again. Something that's not something that's not groovy.
I think there's nothing wrong with having a recurring melody, a leitmotif or something, but you have to add that variety. It can always come back, but if you, as long as you have like a little break between it with variety, that's the most important.
Yeah, like Perfunctory's track has a very recurring melodic theme throughout the whole track, but because it has such a variety of sounds and the atmosphere is so built out, you kind of, you don't notice it as much. It doesn't have that same level of fatigue as where you have very similar sounds throughout this track and a similar drum groove and, you know, that sort of copy and paste feel. So the melody being the same, it just adds to that sort of sameness.
Decorating it a little bit, maybe with harmonies or even just changing the range, I think, or like changing the octave in a different section with it. Oh, look at that, it's a different octave. Like,
this melody is only 1 bar long, right? Whereas like Perfunctory's melody is like 16 bars long or something. So it takes a lot longer to get repetitions within a minute span. You know, how many repetitions of this do we have in a minute span? It goes by real fast. So if the thing is short like that, yeah, it's harder. It's harder to find ways to you have to do more, basically. The slower your thing is, the more you can repeat it because you kind of forget about it by the time it repeats.
So maybe that's an interesting point. Really short repeated melodies should probably be bass lines, because if they're melodies, they can become fatiguing very quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something.
At least they need some kind of contrast for some time. Maybe 4 repetitions in a row is okay. Maybe even 8, and when it's first off. But then when you get past that, I mean, that's the experience of like, you know, you're going through playlists, right? And you listen through his track and you're like getting in it. And then at some point, something in you is just like, next. What is that comes out that's like next, right? There's some degree of like, either this has gone too repetitive, too boring, too noisy, too ugly, too, you know, this is my sensation when I'm composing is like, I want to listen through my track and personally have the sensation of engagement the entire time I'm listening and of smoothness in my experience, so that I don't have a sensation that like, oh, there's that little thing, you know, I don't want any of that. So I'm on the prowl for any little this that happens, you know, I'm just listening through, and any little bit that comes out where I just feel like, but I just let it go. No, can't let it go. Go in there, make some changes, do something until the whole experience is just totally smooth. When the whole experience is smooth for me and I'm fully engaged in listening to it, I'm done with the track. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, next up we got Q to Godfather with Reality R. I don't know if the R is supposed to be part of it, but I'm putting it in there because it's in the title. Probably just Reality, but Reality R. Okay, Q. Let's check it out.
About reality. Mama's grieving and kids starving. Everybody wanna be a robber. Everybody wanna be a killer. Everybody wanna be a drug dealer. Let's talk about reality. Let's talk about reality. No role models, no leaders. They'll say poison for some chump change. No role models, no leaders. They'll say poison for some chump change. Saying this and doing that, mislead your people, huh? You saying this and doing that, mislead your people, huh? Everybody wanna be cool. Monkey see, monkey do. Everybody wanna put a nigga on the news. Monkey see, monkey do. Everybody told them tools. Monkey see, monkey do. Everybody got a Glock. Catch get the switch. Monkey see, monkey do. Everybody wanna put a nigga on the news. Monkey see, monkey do. Everybody wanna be cool. Should've took your dumb ass to school. Monkey see, monkey do. Everybody wanna be cool. You saying this and doing that, mislead your people, huh? You saying this and doing that, mislead your people, huh? Let's talk about reality. Let's talk about
Wow. Banging, Q. Nice one. That was fat. Heavy from start to end. I'll say this. There's two things. If you change these two things, the track's going to go up like 100% in quality. Number one is your mastering. Mastering right now, you're like slamming the thing into a compressor or a limiter. I don't know which, probably compressor. And you can tell because when the first kick hits of a section, it's massive. Then the whole track goes woo and sinks. And everything after that is quiet. So listen to this example.
Y'all already know what the fuck going on. Yeah, hey.
Hear that? That first hit is big, then the snares progressively get quieter, the kicks progressively get quieter. Right? And then when the bass stops, it all gets to swell and then it gets sucked down again. This is too much compression or limiting or whatever it is that you're doing there to be more subtle in the way that that's. We need some of it, of course, but we don't want to actually have this not just even audible pumping, but this is like the whole track is being turned down. And that's because the threshold on the compressor is set, or the limiter or whatever it is set too low. So when the track plays, the entire thing is above it all the time. So what that means is that whatever your settings on your compressor are, they're fully active all the time. So if it's getting compressed by like 6 dB or whatever it is here, as soon as it starts, it just all gets pulled down and it just stays there. What you want is only the biggest moments are going to poke above that threshold like that and cause squeezing. So when the kick comes, it hits with the bass, it hits with the cymbals and whatever, then everything gets squeezed for a moment. That's what people call glue, mix glue, right? Gets squeezed and then it lets go right away. And that feeling of what glue is, the feeling of mixed glue, is the feeling that all of these elements are part of a whole. They're part of a thing. What affects one affects all. When sounds in real life are constrained within the space of a room or whatever it happens to be, this happens. The energy of one sound affects the energy of all sounds. That's what we're wanting, but not to the point where the whole track is getting turned down. That's my first point. Second point is vocal mic. You need a different vocal mic. Or I don't know what your vocal mic is, but like it's so dull right now. No high frequencies. If you listen to modern hip hop stuff, like those vocals are in your face, super bright, super dry. So you got to make sure, I don't know what you're recording on right now, but you got to make sure you have a nice mic going into, or at least a semi-decent mic going into your interface in a very dry environment. If you did that, hyper compressed your vocals, filter out a lot of the low end, a lot of these modern hip hop stuff, they don't leave much fundamentals in their voice. They get rid of like, I don't even know, up to like 130 hertz or something, depending on the guy. And then if it was like with exciters and saturators on it, it would be like in your face. Those two things alone will like skyrocket this track beyond where it is.
Even just turning your voice up, like even if you didn't get a better mic, just turn your voice up in the mix and kind of try to turn some of the other things down that are competing with your voice for room. And all of us, yeah, that would also immediately improve it, I think. Yeah, if you look at whatever compressor or limiter you're using on your mastering chain, as soon as that kick hits, you'll probably see the dB drop will go to like 10 or something. And then you'll watch it like slowly come back as the volume of the track increases. And then as it hits again, it'll go back. Maybe you have a different opinion on this, Max, but I feel like on your mastering chain, your compressor probably shouldn't be reducing your decibels by more than like 3 or 4.
Absolutely. If that.
Yeah.
The 3 and the 4 should be happening like earlier in the track. I mean, if your limiter is reducing by 3 or 4, that's a different story because it's just working on momentary tiny little peaks. But if your compressor is doing 3 or 4 or more, that's your entire song, not just your transient, not just your peak getting turned down by that much. And that's what we're hearing here.
Yeah. And watch your release time as well, because you can mess with that to kind of mess with how the glue feels. If your release is really fast, it can have a weird effect of like that volume pumping happening too quickly. So you want your release to be at a nice kind of range where it's not going to sit at like a high dB reduction for too long, but it also shouldn't be like flopping back and forth, or else you're going to get weird volume pumping stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm taking notes about this compressor stuff. But going back on, I mean, I'm not going to comment on the actual lyrics because I'm not, I'm not a rapper. But for the vocals, yeah, you know what? It's the vocals is supposed to be, the front man. And I felt like it wasn't in this track. I felt like it was kind of difficult to make out the lyrics too at times. I wanted them to be more crisp. I wanted to hear those enunciations and, harsher those sounds like the S's, the D's, like I felt like it wasn't clear. That was my take on the vocals. I have another comment, but if you guys want to keep going on this, go ahead.
I think I don't know if it's worth it, Max, if you want to just like pull up a compressor, if you think you can like show what we were talking about, if it's worth going into that.
I can try. I'm not sure that, doing it on top of this is going to be an interesting sound, but
just to like show what the difference is within like release time and how
Sure.
deep the dB will go and stuff like that.
Sure. So, okay, I've got the compressor applied directly to the track right now. So I don't know what your settings are. I'm going to leave them like this. Good mastering compression, let's just say, is a general rule of thumb, 2:0 or 2:1 ratio, knee is midway up. Attack is probably more like, I don't know, between, call it 80 and 100, 60 and 100 milliseconds generally for a track. Release is generally around, I don't know, 100 to 200 depending on the tempo of the track. And now we're going to work on the threshold, which is going to determine how much gain reduction we're getting.
Y'all already know the fuck going on.
Currently none.
Y'all already know the fuck going on. Y'all
Let's get this way down.
fuck going on. Yeah.
So now we can hear it even more strongly. The volume is getting ducked, and then it slowly comes back up, and watch the little yellow thing here. Even the initial sound, I've got this set so low that without even any bass in the track, the initial is getting ducked.
Y'all already know the fuck going on. Yeah.
So this should not be happening all the time. If that's happening all the time, then that means literally your track is just getting turned down. That's what's happening there, because that's what a compressor is doing, is turning down the volume. So this should be peaking out,
Y'all already know the fuck going on.
much more like this. Just on occasion, when things are getting too built up, it squeezes a little bit and then releases, right? That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else there?
Oh, I think that was good. But you can watch like that little yellow dB indicator as it comes back up. That's basically the release speed. So if you can imagine, if that's like shooting up really fast, if your release is too quick, that's what's going to cause those volume things that you're going to notice. So you want that to be set. I think that's a part of compression that a lot of people don't think about. They're like, oh, it's all threshold and ratio, but attack and release time can have a major effect on the sound that a compressor gives.
It's huge, because right now, of course, at 93 milliseconds, like if you think about a drum hit, the very, very, very tiny initial sound is like 10 milliseconds maybe. Then the longer kind of like from a kick is maybe 30 to 40 milliseconds. So if you're anywhere shorter than that, those things are getting turned down. So putting it longer allows the punchy elements of the drum to come through and not be affected by that thing. If we put this down to like, 2 milliseconds or something, then this thing is going to go crazy.
Y'all already know the fuck going on.
Because now we're working on every tiny little short form peak that's coming up is getting squashed. And then conversely, if the release is too low, you get a real problem where the interaction between attack and release is now working on individual cycles of the bass, so that as your low bass note is coming, every time it peaks, it's compressing it and releasing it right away. And you get this brrrr, and it creates audible distortion in the song that just sounds like that. Because the thing is trying to work on individual cycles of a bass waveform. That goes for compression in bass across the board, not just mastering, of course. Anytime you're compressing bass, that's a problem. Free distortion, yeah, exactly.
Free.
Okay. Anything else before we move on here?
I just wanted to point out that, like, although it was very repetitive, and I think that's a given for the style of music, I felt like there was a good amount that was spent on each section that was and then like moved on to the next section before I started feeling like I want something new. Felt like it was like appropriate times where it was like repetitive and I was like, oh, and even before I could even say like I'm looking for something new, it just there's another section.
Agreed. Yep. Yeah, I felt like honestly the coherence of the overall thing was generally good. There's probably too many things happening at once at certain times, like too many melodic elements layered on top of your voice because we don't know what to listen to. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, most of the stuff was all in key with itself. When the bass would change, it was reflected in the sample, that you had some kind of horn sample or something that was working as your chords. So in general, it was fairly coherent. It was just perhaps too much happening at a time to distract us from trying to hear you. That's what we want to do. If that's you, I assume it's you. Okay. Next up, Roger Beckett with Golden Years. Are you here, Roger? Not sure you are today. Okay, let's check it out.
There'll come a time when we'll sit beside the fire, wondering how we ever got this far. Talk about our lives and all our heart's desires. Talk about those times and never afters. And now the kids have left, they're all out on their own. The house is quiet, just you and me alone. I wanna tell you that I'll always hold your hand through all the dark days. And though our hair may someday turn to gray, or even fall out along the way, there's something that I need you to know. That no matter where we are, you'll never have to fear, 'cause I'll always love you in our golden years. Maybe we'll see the world around us changing, all our carefully laid plans, and we don't know if life's rearranging and makes it all so hard to understand. But now the kids have gone, they're all out on their own. The house is quiet, just you and me alone. I wanna tell you that I'll always hold your hand through all the dark days. And though our hair may someday turn to gray, or even fall out along the way, there's something that I need you to know. That no matter where we are, you'll never have to fear, 'cause I'll always love you in our golden years. And when the lights fade out one day, and our children tell their children of the love we share, which never fades away. I wanna tell you that I'll always hold your hand through all the dark days, and though our hair may someday turn to gray, or even fall out along the way, there's something that I need you to know, that no matter where we are, you'll never have to fear, 'cause I'll always love you in our golden years.
That's
Very
so
nice.
sweet.
Yeah, very sweet, Roger.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That was an original song, all original lyrics and everything.
Good question.
He says it's one take. By the way, playing piano and vocals in one take.
Nice.
Just reading the comments. It is him singing.
Yeah, so I really like it. I thought it was a very classic styled piano ballad type of track. Appropriate harmonic choices, like the use of the, I mean, what? I don't know perfect pitch, I'm sorry. Okay, like the use of the E thing. Yeah, I thought it was really well rounded overall. Piano-wise, I'm talking compositionally now, not mixing. I would have liked more variation in terms of articulation. It's very quarter notey. You know, the whole thing is chun, chun, which I know is a vibe. But it would have been nice to say in the bridge, either hold like whole notes or even half notes, or switch to da do do dee da do do dee da dee do dee, you know, some kind of arpeggiated situation. You know, this sort of deal. Just to break up the texture, because it gets a bit like hypnotic, bordering on monotonous, to hear the constant flum, flum, flum. I want some breakup of it, so when we come back to the chorus again, it also has meaning there.
I felt that too. I think the overall vibe that this song gave me is kind of like, so Frio mentioned, I think it was Frio said, oh no, Elbow said, it has a sense of like a timeless classic. It makes me feel like a piano cover of a timeless classic, where, I mean, I would want to hear kind of like the original, you know what I mean? I want to know what the original sounds like with the band. Because I did feel like it would really benefit from like some strings here and there, and maybe like some percussions, like building into specific, like certain sections, especially maybe after like the first chorus being so powerful, and then kind of like, instead of it coming down, keep the vibe by adding a percussion, because the piano too is like within us, it's like a closed range. So maybe make use of space in that sense by adding other instruments. But I mean, if this is definitely like you just want it to be a piano and vocal song, by all means, you know what I mean? This is just like my suggestions in terms of making it sound more of like, this is the original of the timeless classic.
Yeah, I see you're saying here that's an acoustic work in progress, so it sounds like you're planning to add more of a band aspect to it, but just in its current form right now, I'm going to comment on like you've made it more difficult on yourself just having piano and voice, because now it's all in your performance. Making the song like great and keeping interest throughout it's all dependent on the performance, both your keyboard and your singing, so that it really makes it like you have to, if you want it to like to get it to the next level, it has to be like down, like the rhythm. I noticed a few times the piano rhythm with the voice kind of got a bit off, and that took me out of it. And holding the pedal so that some of the notes from the previous chord were held over into the next chord, like little things like that just they take you out of it. It takes away from the impact that the song could have. So in its current very bare bones state of just piano and voice, if it's going to stay like this, I would say just work more on the performances, try to get them as clean as you possibly can. But if it's just a work in progress and you're planning to add more band elements later, luckily the more production you add, it's kind of easier to cover up your mistakes here and there.
Yeah, I agree. I had the same feeling. As far as mixing goes, I felt the sound currently is dated. It sounds like a kind of 80s mix because of two main things, both reverb. The reverb on the piano is massive, which is fine, but it's massive and very loud relative to the dry piano sound. So there's a discrepancy between where your voice feels, like the piano feels like it's like back there in the room, and your voice feels like it's right here. I would keep the same level of reverb on the piano, or it's not the same level, the same size, but turn it down so that the dry signal of the piano is louder. That's my sensation of it. And as well on the voice, the same, but also filtering the reverb. Now, this is a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand the sound of T's and S's and all this being grabbed by reverbs because they get grabbed more than anything else because they have so much energy if you're not de-essing your voice properly. So that when you go years, the S just like rings out into oblivion. And most modern types of production actually filter their reverb a lot so that you're taking an EQ to the reverb and you're cutting out, like I'll just show you real quick what I mean. Like if this is your normal, this is the reverb EQ spectrum here. A vocal EQ and a vocal reverb these days looks like this most of the time. Like this is gone, basically. All the high frequencies are not happening. All the low frequencies are not happening. And just this mid-range, which is where the fundamentals and harmonics of your voice live, that's what rings out over. But then when you say consonants and stuff, they don't catch the reverb. It's just they stay T's and S's and whatever CH's, they all stay dry. And the rest gets whatever, evocative through the massive reverb. So those two things, and one other, which is that, and you may not be able to fix this because of your recording situation, I can hear the room in your vocal mic. You're working in some, medium, smallish size room, and I can hear that baked into your recording, which is then going into the reverb. And to my ears anyway, this is a very amateur sound, basically. This is exactly why I had to put up all of my absorbers in my huge room here, because this is too much reverb. And as soon as that reverb gets baked into any recording, vocal, guitar, drums, whatever, you can't get it out. And it has a quality to it that is separating, because that reverb is real. That reverb is part of the original signal. It's a real room. It's baked in there. The piano doesn't have that. And you can't even really get it there. You can emulate it with some kind of convolution style reverb, but you can't get the exact same quality as hearing the room baked into your vocal mic. So anything that you can do to get drier vocals and reverb them later will give you a more polished professional sound, if that's what you're after.
Next perfunctory is actually, I think what you were showing is post reverb.
I was showing post reverb, yeah.
Okay.
You can get a similar effect with a pre-reverb EQ too, though, so it's not like it's a huge deal. But sometimes I feel like, I don't know what it is. It depends on the reverb, I guess. Reverbs can introduce their own artifacts through any kind of cross modulation that's going on in there, and I want to make sure that all that potential low-end rumble or whatever is taken out. I rarely do it ahead of time. If I'm going to do anything ahead of time on my reverb, it's usually de-essing. For instance, if I have a track that has lead vocal and many backup vocals, you don't need the backup vocals to have nearly as much sibilance, S and T sounds, as the lead vocal does, especially if they are singing in unison with the lead vocal. And if they're singing apart from the lead vocal, you can have a lead backup vocal and then a bunch of other ones if they're harmonies. Because when all those S's and T's build up, you get mad sibilance coming out, right? So you can de-ess all of these things, like let's say you've got lead vocal and you've got a bunch of harmonies, but they're all singing in unison. Those harmonies don't need sibilance at all, basically. In fact, it's going to cause problems because sibilance is generally the area that we hear differences in rhythm to. So say a T sound, if each harmony says T just slightly differently, you get this quality, right? I'm exaggerating right now, but like flamming a drum. And by de-essing intensely all of these backup vocals, not only do those problems not occur, but they also don't feed into the reverb. So you can de-ess those secondary vocals, not that they exist in this track, I'm sorry I'm on a tangent here, or you can de-ess going into a reverb so that you send your vocal to it, it's already got a good amount of de-essing on the actual heard vocal, the main track, but then going into the reverb, you de-ess way, way stronger so that it sounds like you have a mad lisp, basically, like no S's going into your reverb at all. Then you can actually leave some of that, I showed that EQ spectrum, but you can leave some of that high energy there, and then you can get a more of your airy part of your voice in the reverb, but you don't have the S in there because you're going de-essing pre-reverb, if that makes sense.
That's a really good point. I've never thought about that. I always throw de-essers just like on basically all the individual vocal tracks that I'm doing, but actually putting it before the vocal reverb is like a really interesting way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's it. I mean, actually, I have one other thought, which is that this is like a long arrangement, and I think it would do not just from some articulation changes, but one spot with a distinctive harmonic change. You know, you're using this like E major in there, which of course is really cool, especially in the bridge. I can't remember what your bridge chords were, but...
And our children tell their children of the love we share, which never fades away.
Oh, yeah. So here you're using the G because you've key changed, right? So you're in the G thing. And then do you end up going there?
I want to tell you.
Yeah, right. So at some point I would want to hear one like non-diatonic chord other than this E. I'm staying away from the chat. If you're in C, somewhere could have a B flat, or it could have F minor, or it could have D half diminished, or it could have A flat. You know, one of these, or G minor. Just one instance of that somewhere at like a key moment, I think would really like heighten the thing as like this is the peak point of the harmony, so to speak. We've got all this stuff that's generally kind of samey, and then here's this one moment that is bah, you know, specialty kind of thing. Yeah, thank you. I'm pretty good with that. I don't succumb to peer pressure very easily. Okay, I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice one, Roger. It was great.
It really was so sweet, though.
Agreed.
I loved it.
Okay, so now we've got just two more. Next up, we got Soul Dude with Jungleosity. I'm assuming that's how that's supposed to be said. Let's check it out. Ooh, these are some thick waveforms. Damn, perfunctory territory here. Okay. That was cool. Really like that vibe. Throwback style, parallel minor ninth chords. No other way to live. Like that a lot, Soul Dude. Good groove, good vibe overall, feels good. Main things that come to mind at first are dullness of the drop overall, and that's probably a stylistic choice, but the snare is really dull, the kick is really dull, and then you got a ride on top, which is a bit clean. But with that, with all the bass and everything, the whole thing feels very low, midi. Nothing that really cuts through too much. I'm not so opposed to it. However, maybe a snare layer of some on top of this would give just a little bit of punctuation of cleanliness on top of all the low end. But it also could have been cleaned up perhaps with just better relationship between kick and bass, because there's a lot of kind of battling going on down there. I think they occupy basically the same zone, and the kick is really active. You know, it's not just so it's a lot of thudding on top of constant thick bass notes. My feeling is the bass notes actually themselves are already too loud, a little bit, and then the kicks on top of it is too much. In this circumstance, those kicks have got to be filtered a lot more to remove some of the low end, possibly the sample change to be clickier so that you can hear the actual individual attacks of the kick. And I think this is a pretty classic example of you've chosen that the sub is the sub frequency component, and in that case the kick needs to live above it, not try to get both of them to be in the same zone. That idea of I want my kick to be huge and I want my sub to be huge does work in certain genres where you can audibly sidechain the bass to the kick, where here that of course wouldn't work because there's too many kicks and the bass would just be ducking all the time in order to make way for it. So instead you have to think about it in a much more frequency balanced position, which is a sample choice thing. I don't know if this is a drum loop you've used or you've programmed this, but a kick sample choice thing that sits in a more mid-rangey zone with an audible click on it and let the sub do its thing down there.
I think there's a bit of a identity crisis going on in this track. It has both elements of kind of like an ambient, almost like an ambient minimal house type thing with more of like a hypey drum and bass type thing. And I'm not sure that those two things are really like coming together coherently. I think this is most noticeable in that sort of mid breakdown section. You see like the second time when it drops. Yeah, that part. You get this kind of high range, this cool sounding synth, which is a very discernible sound. Like you probably get this max, like this is a sound for like trance or like these kind of hype tracks with the very bright synth, but then it has like kind of a zoo at the end of it. That kind of, it's a very specific sound.
Let's just listen to it. And it feels really modern. It doesn't feel like this old school jungle vibe. That feels like a modern club banger.
Yeah, exactly. That's a modern trancey banger type thing. And that's like leading into a buildup. And then it just kind of, the drop just kind of goes back to the kind of dull, ambient, sort of washy, phasery thing. And so I think there's like, yeah, I think you want to either go more hype, in which case you need to make the drums louder, brighter, more present, and have less of the sort of washy, phasey stuff, or you need to go more ambient and kind of take out some of the hype things. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
I agree.
I have that in my notes too. I mostly about, the whole, this like A and B section. I was like, maybe it needs a better transition. And then I thought to myself, I feel like they're coming from two completely different songs. I didn't feel like they were an A and B section meant to be together. And I don't feel like a better transition would have helped in this case. I wouldn't know how to transition from that A to B and then back. So yeah, I had that in my notes too.
Yeah.
Yes, I am playing the 44 kilohertz tracks in a 48 session. That's because my computer, when I'm doing all the streaming stuff, just cries when I try to switch sample rates. So I said, screw it, I'm just going to load them all in here. So
For
you
nothing.
did it for nothing. Yeah. Undithered. I thought, is it true that the chords went double speed? Like they start. Yeah. They're 2 bars long at first, then they become 1 bar long afterwards. I like that idea. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Right? So it's like the same harmony, but its harmonic rhythm gets squished in half. I thought that was a kind of a cool vibe there. I had some other point about this. Oh yeah, so this is a really difficult to talk about subject that I hope to make a video on one day. And it's called, in my mind, it's called rhythmic balance, and it has to do with usually drum grooves, but can be anything, and it has to do with how kicks, snares, hats, and other elements stack across any given length of time. Call it a bar, 2 bars, 4 bars. It depends on the pattern, and how they set up offsets. That's how it is in my mind. Like certain kicks and certain hits will offset the groove, and it needs to be righted by another kick that comes later, and it balances the thing out. And there's a bunch of stuff to get into about that, but something about this groove is slightly off balance to me, and I'm going to play it again. There's a few spaces in the middle of the pattern and at the end of the pattern that at least occasionally need to be hit somehow to right the balance. It's too much in depth for me to go now and talk about, like, there is a whole theory behind this in terms of like distance from center point equals this, blah, 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 blah. I'm not often thinking about it in those terms when I'm writing. I'm just doing it instinctively, but it can actually be theoretically looked at in terms of like what creates this off balance vibe. And perhaps nobody else feels that, but when I listen to it, I got this feeling that like I never quite get to the end of the pattern. It's like falling forward over itself all the time, and it doesn't have this cohesive, like chunked, this is the pattern has now finished vibe to me. So I can't tell you now in this span of time how to do that, but I just want to bring up the point for not just you, but for everybody to consider that as an idea when you're making any kind of beat-based music. What is rhythmic balance? How does it work? You know, when you're listening to any groove, especially really famous grooves, for instance, the standard drum and bass groove, there's, in these grooves that have persisted for decades, there is inbuilt a type of rhythmic balance that is instinctive to everybody. That's why the groove takes on a life of its own, and it transcends genres and decades. People use it forever because it just works, right? So I think that, when we're deviating from standard grooves, which of course I'm all for, love to deviate from cliche grooves, please do it. It's just about being really attentive to this sense of rhythmic balance. I mean, if you're trying to please me, if you're trying to do anything else, then whatever, do whatever you want. I don't know if anyone else ever thinks about rhythmic balance besides me, but when I hear it. I feel like, this needs just a little snare that goes there, a little kick that goes there, just to orient the thing over and over again.
It's something that's really overlooked because rhythm is not typically seen as a melody, but rhythm does have a phrase too.
Agreed. Anything else about this?
I felt like the intro was maybe a little bit too long. I was getting a little bit lost in it. I also felt maybe because it was a little bit too long, it was like losing focus on it. So I don't know, when there was that rhythmic change for the chords, I was a little bit lost. And I thought maybe a fade in of percussions would have helped, rather than just a right straight on like appearance.
Yeah, let's just hear this first little bit again. Yeah, on that second repetition there, we probably need something to start coming in, like a down riser or something that, it's amazing. You don't even need something that intricate or interesting. It can literally just be, and that's enough to be like, oh, something has changed here. So long as one little thing is different, I feel like your mind just releases the boredom thing.
Yeah. I would agree overall that the intro seemed a bit too long. And honestly, it makes your job easier if you just shorten sections, because it's like then you don't have to work as much on keeping them interesting. And intros that are too long, like there's not an easier way to make people turn away from a song faster than like a boring intro. It's like it's the quickest way to get someone to click next, you know.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
keep it short.
Agreed. Okay, last up, we have Stranger with Scuffed Cyberpunk. Not sure what that means, but we're going to find out. Woo!
That's definitely my jam.
Typical stranger.
Of course. Wow.
That was awesome. Go for it, Carmela.
Oh my God. I just gotta say, man, that's a really strong composition. Sound design, really great. I think at this point, the sound design is all about the details now in terms of like refining it. Um, gosh, I have so much to say about this. The layering is amazing. With each repetition, it's like it was at the perfect moments for me not to get bored. There's like it's impossible for me. I mean, even with just like even if there was a repetition with nothing new, I think the composition was interesting enough that I'd be like, yeah, that's great. But he added a layer with each repetition, and it was just enough for it to be not too over the top. He did it twice. I think there were 3 repetitions for that E section that he did it twice. So it was like the perfect amount. Like the bass is simple but interesting enough to like the bass. I mean, like the bass of the A, like the A, and then there's the A prime and the A prime prime. But the drops and the cuts play with your heartstrings. Like absolutely, it was an adventure for me. It really made me feel like I love Crypt of the Necrodancer, and it gave me Crypt of the Necrodancer vibes. So I'll let you guys go giving your input now, because I just fantastic.
Yeah, I love all the sections. It's a really great complex track. So many different parts that you can't really get bored. There's always something new for your ears to latch onto. I agree that you're at the point now where it has to be all in the details, because there was something about each section that I thought like, it could be better. Like each section I think could be just juiced a little more in the direction that you were going with. Like you have your metal section, you have kind of your little down tempo sort of dancey section. There's like, but each of them, I think, while they work together because of all the similar elements throughout, they also sort of lose the impact that each of them could have, because I think you keep too many elements the same. There's not enough things changing in each section. Even though there are things changing, you could juice each one a little bit more, and that's where the details come in. But I'll let Max say something.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. I thought that the overall track was awesome. It's very much in my wheelhouse. Love this kind of stuff. Changing all these different sections, super hype, fat basses. I love that. So I also agree. It's in the details and it's in the juicing of what you got there. Say take this first little bit. No. So, that could have been something else, I think. Like, we've been hearing, and you're going to give the bass a break there. Do something that is not that, so that when you come back to, it can do those notes, but, something like that. That is like a whole new ripping kind of bass that feeds back into the. That's the kind of detail that's in my mind, is like overall the thing feels good, it flows well, the stuff is strong, but it's the minute details that make all the difference in this case as well. 2 main thoughts came to mind. One is perhaps it's overlayered at times to the point of being excessively busy, and that can be solved either through mixing decisions, that is removing certain frequencies from things, filtering things, panning things, whatever, or by just asking, as you go back through, what is really, really necessary, in the process of cutting. And that process of cutting doesn't mean I need to get rid of this whole instrument. It just means perhaps even though a minute ago it was going maybe now it goes it just simplifies when it's not the focus anymore, right? Things like this, that like how do I just remove a little bit of, I understand we're going for madness here, but like the madness is sometimes overwhelming to the point of the issue I'm trying to get to is that melodies were lost on me several times, and these high things, and that's because of two aspects. One is there's so much other stuff happening that I can just be like, well, I'm just going to forget about that and go listen to like 1,000 arpeggios that are going on in here. Or that the lead sounds themselves, to my sensibility, were very like smooth, upper frequency. They didn't have enough bite in them, and so they don't cut through like a zzz, zzz, zzz in front of everything, because everything else is like grilling you, and this thing almost sounds like it's just a little angelic soft, even though it's like a hype synth on its own. Hearing it in the context of the mix, I wasn't pulled into being like, whoa, what is this melody doing right now? It was kind of like, oh, there's a new little layer there, and I'm just going to let it go do its thing. I don't even know what notes it's playing, really. So that combination of the sounds for the melody as well as the layerings, the amount of layering perhaps distracts from the main event in terms of like what is the flow of focus, and my focus sometimes drifts because there's just too much.
Mm-hmm. I think that layering goes into differentiating the sections, because when everything kind of has that sort of busy sound, then it's harder to actually give each section its own kind of unique sound to it. And I like that you brought up the arpeggios, because I think Stranger is like the man of 1,000 arpeggios. But it's good in a way, because it adds that vibe, that really awesome sort of, I guess, the Necrodancer vibe, like you were saying. But it can really easily get out of hand a little bit with the layers. I want to like look at the metal section real quick, because I think that's one where like the drums are so dope. Like that hits and it's like, okay, this is sick. If you want to like play it for a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, it comes in, it's like, whoa, this is new. This is awesome. But there's a lot of other things that are going on still that kind of make it a little too much. Like there's so many in both ears, and there's like all these harmonic things happening. What I really want there is for it to just be heavier. I want some chuggy guitars, panned wide. I want a fat bass, and I just want it to be like jun 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 jun, right? Like, obviously still includes some of the like harmonic stuff above that, but I think you're missing out on a possibility there to be like, yes, really impactful.
Yeah, that was my feeling for that section too. And that's a really hard thing to do, is put metal drums like this with double kicks in the middle of an EDM style song that has super fat subs and kicks, because the metal drums can't hold their own against the EDM kicks in terms of beastliness. They sound intense, but listen, I'm just going to A-B these sections. Here's the EDM. You know how fat that kick is? Now these. It's like it's lost a whole zone there. The bass is thinner, it's in a higher octave, the kicks are thinner. The issue is, because I know this because I've tried to do this 100 times, is when you try to make these techie metal kicks be as big as EDM kicks, it doesn't work because they get too bloated, right? You can't do but have every one be like this. So there's a bunch of tricks that are possible to work on that. One is, as I just mentioned there, go listen to Doom Eternal and see what he does in there. He's got a lot of interesting ideas about how to do it. What happens in actual metal a lot of times is that at the beginning of that section, they'll do a huge sub impact in addition to the first kick. So, and while the other kicks are going, the sub is still ringing out. And you get a smoother transition because your first hit is big and it convinces you you've landed in this massive space, and it slowly fades while the lighter kicks start to take over your attention, and you don't notice as much the change in frequency balance. So that's a kind of like way around it, you could say, is to ease the ear in and out of changes in sub level, because of course that's a really tough thing. It's a tough thing within a single song. It's a tough thing comparing songs to reference songs. If a song doesn't have the same power in the low frequencies as a previous one in the same genre, is just going to sound like, oh well, it's not banging, you know. It's so important to get that right. So I would try to beef those kicks up with as much sub as you can get before they become too bloated. Then make sure your bass is in a low octave there. And then maybe try this trick I just mentioned. There's many examples of this happening all throughout thrash metal and djent and whatever, of doing this kind of like sub drop on the one.
And layering the bass and the guitars and having them hit very tight and at the exact same times as the kick drum. So basically the guitars and the bass and the kick are all the same instrument, and they're just making that groove like heavy and tight, and like that's what makes it sound dope, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Well, it was a banger. Anything else to say about it?
No.
All right.
I think I said enough.
Great. Okay, well, that's it, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. We went over time there, but, well, over time. I didn't have a set time, but I was hoping to be under 2 hours, but we just kind of talked our heads off for a while. But hopefully it was enjoyable for you and helpful to those who submitted songs, potentially helpful to others that just listened, too. The replay will be available for anybody. I mean, I don't know if I'll post it to the channel, but it will be available in this format of unlisted video. And we need some way to have the link permanently posted somewhere. I don't know what to do about that yet. But if you have the link, you'll be able to come back and watch this. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to find it. It's not going to appear on my channel or anything like that. So if someone has some suggestions on what I should do with that, feel free to tag me in the Discord. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say. You guys have anything else you want to mention?
Just
Great job, everybody.
amazing entries.
Great stuff. And you know what? It takes a lot of courage to, submit a work in progress. So great stuff, guys. Keep it up. You know what? I would even love to see somebody resubmit their work in progress with our suggestions, or just, I decided to go another route kind of thing, and just see how it's evolving. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah.
Agreed. And if anybody has thoughts and feedback on this format of stream, did you like it? Did you like having us three here chatting about it? Was it valuable to you? Whatever. We want to hear from you in the Discord what you thought about this, what you thought could be improved, anything, because, we want this to be the most beneficial thing possible for everybody. So we're not here just to talk amongst ourselves for fun. We could do that anytime we want. So the point is to be useful and beneficial. So any thoughts you have on this, if we're going to continue this in the future in some fashion, I would love to hear that so we can make it as useful to everybody as possible. And that's it. Tomorrow, we're doing it again. Not feedback, but we're going to have the challenge stream tomorrow, so hopefully you got your ambient tracks submitted. I'm going to make mine tomorrow on stream, of course, as always, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah. Hope to see you guys there. Otherwise, we'll see you in the Discord, and we'll let you know when another event like this is going to happen. Thanks for being here, everybody. Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.